We are looking here in gCADPlus at a design for a rather large site. I imagine it's a rural site with a road running from the top left at an angle up. And let's just have a look at its area. We can use the area tool and click along the perimeter of the site, come down to the bottom, then back to the top and click. And there is our area measurement. And if you look down in the status line here, 55702.67438. And if we shift the decimal place by 6 to change millimetre square into square metres, I'll also draw your attention to the fact that if we go File and File Size, the file size is 4 megabytes in size, and to my mind there is not a lot in this design. Let's see if we can work through and reduce the file size, make things a little smaller, and perhaps gCADPlus will move around, or you can move around in the gCADPlus environment more easily. I'll change my view to a background color of white to make things a little easier to see. There are some symbols over here to the right. Those symbols will already be in the editor, and if we scroll down through here, you may be able to see some of the symbols appearing in here. I would be inclined at this quite early stage to remove the symbols that are outside the direct area there, and I'll save again and have a look at the file size, and it's not reduced at all because the symbols actually still sit in the block library, in the blocks associated with the drawing, not in the block library, which is found up here. So the symbols are still available and can be used at a later time. So here we are, here's our design. The first step that I would run on a design like this to reduce the file size is go to Tools and use our Purge Unused Objects tool. So it's removed 4 layers, 37 text styles and 45 blocks that are no longer being used in what we see here. And we'll save, and I'll save it to my desktop, and I'll just call it Purged, and then we'll open it up again and have a look at it. Well, it's a personal preference, but I want to rotate the site so that things are a little squarer. Having a road and the site running at that angle, let's click on a couple of these lines and look in the properties box, and the angle is 13 there, and let's have a look at this one. It's 12, so there's some the reporting in this copy of gCADPlus is not giving us an angle of sufficient detail. We need to change that. So Format, Drawing Units. Let's make the output precision 2 decimal places. And now this line here seems pretty square to the site. So its angle is 12.03. So I'm going to say Tools, Select All, Rotate as a base point, 0, 0, and gCADPlus works with positive towards the 90 degrees, so the 0, 0 minus 12.8, and we hit enter, and that's squared things up reasonably well. I'll just undo, maybe it wasn't 12.8, 12.03. My apologies. I'll select, rotate 0, 0 minus 12.03, and now we should have a relatively straightforward looking site. The buildings, of course, you can't have everything square, but we want a convenient way to work, and I think that helps just a little. So at this point I'll save that version And the next thing I'd probably look at, no particular order of importance, but I'd click on one of these. That's a solid colour in a colour 223, in a true colour. And this one here is a solid fill in a different colour. And let's take a closer look at this block of colour. So I'll zoom in and then put a crossing window across here and then have a look in the properties box. You can see we've got 2 polylines and 1 hatch here. Now let's unselect all. Let's pick the hatch and get rid of it. And we can pick 1 polyline there. Let me zoom out for you. It's still got that same colour, although I'm not even, now it's 170 I think. It's this colour here. And it's 223. Can't quite remember, so I'll undo. And that one is 223. So the intention is to have that block with colour 223. So I'll pick here and change its colour to 223. It's there. And now if we come down into the properties and say yes, it's filled, we've got exactly the same result that we have before. But we do have, let's go back in again, there are 2 polylines there. Let's click on the top one and see what we've got. Another polyline underneath it. And let's delete it. So we've removed the solid hatching. We simply have 1 polyline. So we've simplified the drawing. You might be disturbed by one existing tree is now partially hidden. So it's tools and bring it to the front. So just in this top part of the drawing, things are getting a little easier to manage. Now I imagine that down here we've probably got a similar situation. Again, we've got 2 polylines and a hatch. So I'll spend some time just going through the drawing, making sure that these zones, which represent fields or paddocks of different uses, and that's a reminder that we're going to need some sort of legend here. Just see if we can simplify things. There seems to be a bit of a mismatch of colour, maybe, and of layer as well. So we'll carry on, just cleaning up a little. The file size is not going to change much, but I hope you see it's potentially a little easier to manage. Well, I've been working my way down the left-hand side of the design, and each zone now is on a particular layer. Zonas originalis is another one on the same. But when we come down here, just to illustrate the difficulty, if we pick this one, this is on, that's in fact a hatch. It's on the original zonas. So let's delete it, because underneath it is another polyline. And if we delete it, underneath it again is yet another polyline on the layer zonas originalis, and I'll have it filled. So can you see that there's considerable difference in thing? We probably don't need 2 or 3 polylines covering the same area. We're just trying to simplify things. If you did need a border around any of these zones that we're talking about, I'll click up here and change the 1 to a plus, which means I can pick, say, this closed polyline that's filled, this closed polyline that's filled. It has no to the border, and I'll say yes, it does have a border, and I'm going to change the colour of the border to say a medium grey colour, and we'll unselect all. Can you see now it's just one entity still? It's just 1 polyline, whereas we had a hatch and 2 polylines superimposed on one another. Now we've just got the 1. So I think it's a lot simpler. So if you did need an outline, you now can see a simple way to do it. And because we've changed this to a plus sign, we can pick all of those zones, which are now indicated by a polyline. We can say to all of them, they have now color 252, and we can escape from there. Whoops, I forgot to set that the notation that the border was on. Now they all of the zones to the left hand column, apart from this one down here, which is clearly some existing vegetation, are all behaving in a similar way. But if we now pick that one, again, can you see the same problem? A couple of polylines and a hatch. So I need to move on and again just simplify things. And so to sum up, we've reduced the file size, we've reduced the size of these splodges of colour marking land use in the various areas, and I moved to a layout space where if we look at the right click and look at the layouts manager, we're looking at an A3 sheet here, and we have two floating viewports, the main one on the left and a subsidiary one here. I'll just expand that up so they are approximately the same size, and we can adjust what we see in a floating viewport by double clicking in the viewport here and just zooming in a little. So we're looking here, I guess, at the entrance off the main road down to a group of buildings. So let's display that. And now we can return back to our model and zoom in here, and we can just put some little symbology in there which helps get an understanding of scale. So there we might go to details and go down to vehicles and pick an SUV or a second SUV. Let's have this one, and we'll put this SUV into the drawing, and this gives you a much better idea of size. So here's an SUV coming in to the driveway. So this is a very large site indeed, which we established very early on. I haven't finished all of them. If we pick this one here, you can see there's some something hiding behind here. This is still a hatch pattern on that one. For most of them, I just have a polyline and a closed polyline at that. Here's one I forgot to say, yes, have a border color, and I've been consistent calling that 252. Of course, if you wanted to smooth things off a little, nothing wrong with changing that to a curve, and the same might apply to the whole of the driveway. This area I presume is going to be paved, but hasn't yet been turned into a polyline. So whatever we do, we just added a small symbol representing a vehicle, and it automatically appears in this layout sheet. So we're ready to, well, not quite ready to send it to a client, but we're moving along in that direction. So I hope you can see that's the way you might develop a land use application for a very large site. Well, the drawing, of course, is a master plan for a development, so you really would want to make sure you make a copy at each stage of your work so that there's no risk of losing a file. And don't forget the little plus sign here. If I click on it, that does an increment and save, so the drawing's now being saved as purge 01. And if I went on and did some more work, which I will, let's imagine that you have some information about the trees that you're going to plant along the avenue to the entrance. You might well take advantage of gCADPlus extended data, and we're going to store some extended data. We'll pick this one. So let's imagine that we want to store some information about species. We can type in its botanical name. I have no knowledge of what's there on the site, but let's make this one Betula alba, white birch. Its height, we can estimate its height might be 15 meters at maturity. You can actually store the Google KLM, because you could well have a Google Maps as on another layer behind here, and you could actually zoom. You could tell a contractor will go to that particular spot on the site. You can even have the GPS coordinates. And if you had some information about the white birch that's available on the net, you could link to a URL. Well, I've added the URL to the Wikipedia reference for the white birch or silver birch, so we'll OK it. Now if we come down here in the status line and say show high identity data, we've turned it on now, and we can move here, and you may see the information that we just added with a misspelling in it. I've got a W for Bachelor Alba, and so you can see we're storing information, and a lot of information about species on the site. So I hope you get the feeling that master plans like this can develop over time and be very useful as a management plan on a site such as this.